Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back once again as we look over some of this week's highlights in the 1-hour build-off series. This week we were doing 1950 NASCAR stock car style racers, and we took them around the automation squash run in let's say, an homage to the days of stock car racing coming from moonshine running, the original Daytona races, which took place, on the beach as well as on the roads. So it was the closest thing I could find to that. And we ran an incredible 41 cars around that course yesterday on a 6-hour live stream. It was intense. I've cherry-picked today some of my favorites, some of the ones that were the quickest, and mostly the ones that I thought were most thematic. So we're going to go through some today and put them around the automation short course, which is the one that includes the big banked turn, because that just feels right. The rules for this week were pretty basic. 1950, ladder frame, solid rear axle, 5 quality hours or 5 quality units to spend, and then pretty much have at it. But try to make yourself something that was adequately NASCAR / stock car / 50s car themed. I went for something that, in my mind, would fit in NASCAR 1950s, meaning it was an older car that was then being used for stock car racing. It wasn't too common in this era to be using a brand new car to do this kind of racing, because it was probably going to get destroyed, and it was probably just seen as wasteful to do such a thing. So I chose a 1940s body and basically just tried to dress it up like a 1940s car with some accents that made it more obvious to be a race car. Pretty happy with how the look turned out. I'm not very good at designing older cars, but I don't know, maybe I did okay with it. That's up for you to decide. But let's go ahead and take a look at what this thing is made of. It has, interestingly, an inline-6 engine, and that is something not terribly uncommon for the era. V8s did not really take over the sport and take over, stock car racing until a little bit later, so inline-6s, not unheard of. So we have a 3.7-liter inline-6 making 148 horsepower. Just trying to keep the horsepower low because with these small bias ply tires, there's only so much grip you can actually put to the ground. So that is why I decided to try and stay in that range. But still, 148 horsepower in a 2,400 pound car should be sporty enough. Let's take it around the track and see what she does. Next up, we have the ever competitive and always strong in these build-off competitions, Gem Knight. Gem Knight went for a wagon. Now that's totally fine to me. It's not maybe the most thematic car in the competition, but the era is right, the look is right, and it is the case that in the earlier days of stock car racing, it was much more run what you brung. It was much more you raced the car you could find and not necessarily the car that was the most suited for it. So I'm going to give it a pass here. I'm going to let the wagon say that it is indeed on theme. I do like the look. A lot of effort went into the design of the car for sure. This one's using a little bit more of a traditional 5-liter V8. Honestly, that's a little bit large for the era, and this 281 horsepower is quite a bit. That is a lot. However, this thing weighs a lot more than my car did, to the tune of 1,100 pounds more, so 3,500 pounds. So 280 horsepower, but 1,000 more pounds. Should still be able to put that kind of power to the ground. We'll just have to wait and see how it does with that. One thing that is maybe a little stretching it is an aluminum top end with single overhead cam. That's pretty sporty. But it's time to see if it's sporty around the track. Taxbill this week, really nice on theme. This is what I'm talking about. This looks great. I think if you photoshopped this car into a picture of NASCAR in the 50s, it would look right. It would fit. And yeah, it's just a really nicely designed car too. I quite like it. Dig the taillight treatment, and overall, yeah, just it looks really nice. You did a really good job with the design on this one. Uses, again, a more traditional overhead valve V8, 4.5 liters, correctly sized, I would say. 211 horsepower, 4,300 RPM redline, about 2,700 pounds. Those are all numbers that are pretty darn competitive, I would say. Maybe a little bit too much power to put to the ground. And as always with these cars, you have a balance. You can get more tire if you use smaller wheels, but you're going to get less brake. And none of these cars are going to have enough brakes. So, is that worth it? I don't know. Let's go see. Next up, it's a Kurt J. Mack. And Kurt went for what looks like, in automation, a really small car. Honestly, this style and size of car fits in pretty well. The stock car scene didn't really start to get bigger in size until the mid to late 50s. That's when the cars started just getting huge. This really looks like a 1940s car that is being used for stock car racing. I like the look a lot. Seeing it in automation is much different. You got a nice brown hood there. The car is named Wingadinga. This is Kurt's build. This is the era of car I expect Kurt to do very well with, and he's done very well with it. Interesting, like there's not a lot of fixtures and there's not a lot going on, but the look is right. And that's, I think, maybe where I kind of tend to struggle with this era, is that the design is kind of minimalistic but bold, and that's hard to pull off. 3.6 liter V8, nice theme there. I like this small displacement V8. 180 horsepower, 5,000 RPM, 2,200 pounds, really light. Should be a really stout performing car. Looks like kind of the middle of the road as far as tire to brake ratio. Yeah, this one This one's a really nice build. Well done, It's Kurt J-Mac. ZK and his Bogart bullet. The thing I really loved the most about this one was the attention to detail to put the X's over the headlights. That really made me happy. Somebody made fun of me in the Twitch chat for being so ecstatic about this. But that's the stuff I like to see. It's cool. It's cool that people can pull off little thematic details like that in, an automation build that make the car look right for the era. And this car definitely looks right for the era. The livery looks right, like this two-tone paint scheme, the crooked numbers. It's right. It looks very fitting. I dig the design of this one a lot. The most interesting thing about the car design of this one is that stagger. The rear tires are completely outside the front tires, meaning their width is a full tire width wider in the back. Will that help it put down 244 horsepower with a 4.1 liter V8? I don't know. I don't know that is going to overcome those kind of numbers with a 40 pound car, but that's for us to find out on the track. Mrs. Lore went for a 356 themed car, once the fixtures figure themselves out. Obviously, this is a Porsche 356 body. Totally acceptable. Early stock cars were much more open to, like I said before, run what you brung. Would it be very common to run a Porsche? No. But this is not a Porsche. This has a front-engined inline 6 in it. 3-liter inline 6. Single overhead cam, making 176 horsepower. Totally acceptable in my mind. But maybe not the most stock car themed. Like, if you put this into a picture of 1950s stock cars, it would not look like it belongs at the end of the day. It looks like it belongs in a 1950s road race. That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day that I think this car would have really done well in, but overall I like the design quite a bit. It's aesthetically pleasing, it looks right for the era, and it's certainly an interesting one for the competition. One of the more interesting things about this one, it's the opposite of ZK's car. It has a narrower width in the back than the front. You ever driven a car like that before? Probably not. And honestly, there's a reason for that. They do something really interesting. And it might actually be pretty fun. So let's head to the track and see if it is indeed kind of fun. These next two cars fall into the category of cheaty aero users. I didn't make any rules against using aero. I didn't make any rules against using four-wheel drive. I didn't make any rules that really boxed you into any kind of design. What I wanted to see was who was going to get the theme right. Who was going to build cars that fit the NASCAR stock car theme. Some of them, of course, went outside the realm of that. But that doesn't mean that they were bad cars. Some of them ended up being very technically good cars and very quick cars, and this is one of those. And I really wanted to give this one a second chance because I binned it pretty bad in our test on stream, and I felt like the car had a lot of potential in it. 3.8 liter Boxer 6, 237 horsepower, 2490 on the weight. Pretty stout competitor. This is our second Boxer 6. I forgot to say earlier that Gem Knight's car was a Boxer 6, and boy did it sound bad. Don't worry though, there are improvements coming to the sound developments with automation to beamng cars. Big improvements coming. Let's drive this on track and see if that cheaty aero helps it out. Man, you want to talk about cheaty. This one incorporates all of the early days of NASCAR cheating spirit into one car. You remember the story of the fuel lines that ran through the frame rails to help a car go further in the race and exceed the maximum fuel capacity? I think this is that level of cheating. There's wings on this car. You can't see them, but they're there. One's in the bed, and one is... I honestly haven't been able to find it yet, but I'm told it's somewhere under the hood. It's somewhere in here. So this car was producing many hundreds of pounds of downforce front and rear somehow. Honestly, it's kind of a shame because this was one of the coolest looking vehicles in our competition. Super era correct. Really nice use of the chrome details. This looks so 50s. It's just dripping in 50s-ness. I think it's really one of the best designs we had. It's just a shame that it had to be a little cheaty. But that's okay. Certainly had some fun with it, and fun driving it, and it certainly goes real fast. 248 horsepower out of a 5.8 liter V8, single overhead cam, aluminum top end, 3,300 pounds. It's heavy, but boy does it scoot. That was indeed a fun one. I hope you all enjoyed our little foray into the 50s. Wish I had a little bit more time this week to spend some time and review the cars a little bit more in depth. Something I'm looking forward to doing more in the future. Some unfortunate circumstances this week has compressed my schedule into a very tight window of trying to get things done. But I'm glad we at least got to spend some time with these really cool Winga-Dinga 50s NASCAR stock cars. If you're enjoying these 1 hour builds, they're going to continue, but this was probably the last of the open format of them. 41 entries was starting to get to be too much. So from here on, we're definitely going to start to narrow down the field a little bit more, and that might actually give us a little bit more creativity and ability to get actually more people involved with these build-offs, probably having, the build-off rules posted a little early, and getting more people in the community involved that maybe couldn't make this time slot. So I'm looking forward to the continued development of the series, and I hope you're still enjoying it. I look forward to doing more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.